Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is WireDogSec, back with another video. Today's video, we are going to continue on with TryHackMe. This is the Junior Penetration Tester Learning Path Network Security Module in the Nmap Advanced Port Scans room. Learn advanced techniques such as Null, Fin, Xmas, and idle zombie scans, spoofing, in addition to firewall and intrusion detection system and evasion. Now let's go ahead and dive into it. Task 1, Introduction. This room is the third in the Nmap series, part of the Introduction to Network Security module. In this case, this is what we've been going through so far, if you've been paying attention and following on with me. In the first two rooms, we learned about live host discovery and basic port scans, and we're following this path here. Live host discovery was the first one, and then basic port scans was the second one. Third one that we're currently on is the advanced port scans, and then the last one is going to be post port scans. And in Nmap basic port scans, we covered TCP flags and reviewed the TCP three-way handshake. To initiate a connection, TCP requires the first packet to have the SYN flag set. Consequently, we can tell if a TCP port is open based on the response we receive. Security researchers and hackers contemplated the TCP flags shown in the figure below and explained in the previous room and started to experiment. They wanted to know what would happen if we send a TCP packet, which is not part of any ongoing TCP connection, with one or more flags set. As you can see here, the TCP header RFC793, and this is what it looks like here. For instance, an ACK flag is set when you want to acknowledge received data. An ACK scan is like trying to acknowledge data that was neither sent nor received in the first place. Consider this simple analogy. Someone coming to you out of nowhere to tell you, "Yes, I hear you. Please continue," when you haven't said anything. This room explains advanced types of scans and scan options. Some of these scan types can be useful against specific systems, while others are useful in particular network setups. We will cover the following scan types. We've got null scan, fin, Xmas, Maimon, ACK, Window, custom. Moreover, we will cover the following: spoofing IP, spoofing MAC, decoy scan, fragmented packets, and idle/zombie scan. We will discuss options and techniques to evade firewalls and IDS systems. We also cover options to get more verbose details from Nmap. Launch the attack box, which I already have it running. So I'm going to hit complete here, and let's continue on to task number 2 here. TCP null scan, fin scan, and Xmas scan. Let's start with the following three types of scan: null scan, fin scan, and Xmas scan. Null scan. The null scan does not set any flag. All 6 flag bits are set to 0. You can choose this scan by using the -SN option. A TCP packet with no flag set will not trigger any response when it reaches an open port as shown in the figure below. Therefore, from Nmap's perspective, a lack of reply in a null scan indicates that either the port is open or a firewall is blocking the packet. And this is what it looks like here. However, we expect the target server to respond with a reset packet if the port is closed. Consequently, we can use the lack of reset response to figure out the ports that are not closed, open, or filtered. And this is what that looks like. Below is an example of a null scan against a Linux server. The null scan we carried out was successfully identified the 6 open ports on the target system. Because the null scan relies on the lack of a response to infer that the port is not closed, it cannot indicate with certainty that these ports are open. There's a possibility that the ports are not responding due to a firewall rule. And this is what it looks like. This is the results they got back from that. It says note that many Nmap options require root privileges. Unless you are running Nmap as root, you will need to use the sudo as in the example above using the -SN option. So I'm just going to go up here and show split the view because we're probably going to have to do this here in a second. And let's just open up a new tab here and just copy and paste. I'm already logged in as root, as you can see there with the hashtag. And I'm going to paste this in there. Now let's continue on here. Fin scans. The fin scan needs a TCP packet with the fin flag set. You can choose this scan type using the -SF option. Similarly, no response will be sent if the TCP port is open. Again, Nmap cannot be sure if the port is open or if a firewall is blocking any traffic related to the TCP port, and this is what it looks like here. However, the target system should respond with a reset if the port is closed. Consequently, we will be able to know which ports are open and use this knowledge to infer the ports that are open or filtered. It's worth noting that some firewalls will silently drop the traffic without sending a reset. And this is what it looks like here. Below is an example of a fin scan against a Linux server. The result is quite similar to the result we obtained earlier using a null scan. And I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, so I'm going to kill this. And I'm going to try this option here. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this over like so. And this is what it looks like here. You can see filtered, open, yada, yada, yada. And Xmas scan. The Xmas scan gets its name after Christmas tree lights. An Xmas scan sets the fin, push, and urge flag simultaneously. You can select the Xmas scan with the option SX. Like the null scan, the fin scan, if a reset packet received, it means that the port is closed. Otherwise, it will be reported as open filtered. The following two figures show the case when the TCP port is open and the case when the TCP port is closed, and this is what it looks like here. The output below shows an example of a Christmas scan against a Linux server. The obtained results are pretty similar to that of the null scan and the fin scan, and this is what it looks like here in the screenshot. All right, let's continue on here. One scenario where these three scan types can be efficient is when scanning a target behind a stateless, non-stateful firewall. A stateless firewall will check if the incoming packet has the send flag set to detect a connection attempt. Using a flag combination that does not match the send packet makes it impossible to deceive the firewall and reach the system behind it. However, a stateful firewall will practically block all such crafted packets and render this kind of scan useless. All right, question time. In a null scan, how many flags are set to 1? Now with this null scan, I believe it said there weren't any of them, right? So it's going to be 0. In a fin scan, how many flags are set to 1? And that's going to be 1 because it's the fin flag, right? And Xmas scan, how many flags are set? And that's going to be all of them. So I believe that was 6. No, it was not 6. Okay. So if we go back up here, and the correct answer would be, okay, there we go. 1, 2, and 3. So 3 should be this answer. I don't know where I got 6 from, but 3 is going to be set here. So type that in there. Start the VM, which I've already done. Once both are ready, open the terminal, attack box. Use Nmap to launch a fin scan against the target VM. How many ports appear as open filtered? And we have that in here. Let's see here. Open filtered. So let's count them. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is going to be our answer for this one. Repeat your scan launching a null scan against the target VM. How many ports appear as open and filtered? So let me clear all this out of here. And the null scan is going to be this one here. I don't know how long this is going to take, so let's fast forward. Hey everybody, just a quick little blurb here. As you can see here, most people that view my channel are not subscribers. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you're enjoying the video, please consider hitting the like button. It helps get me in the algorithm, helps spread the good word out there, helps bring more people and increase our glorious community here. All right, I'm all about helping out others. I know what it's like to come up in cybersecurity or even try to get into cybersecurity and not knowing where to look. I'm just having this channel up so I can help out other people. All right, that's all I got. All right, the scan finished and it looks like 7 are showing as open filtered. Let's go ahead and continue on to task number 3 here, and we're going to talk about the TCP Maimon scan. Uriel Maimon first described the scan in 1996. In the scan, the fin and ACK bits are set. The target should send a reset packet as a response. However, certain BSD-derived systems drop the packet if it is an open port exposing the open ports. This scan won't work on most targets encountered in modern networks. However, we include it in this room to better understand the port scanning mechanism and the hacking mindset. To select this type of scan, use the -SM option. Most target systems respond with a reset packet regardless of whether the TCP port is open. In such a case, we won't be able to discover the open ports. The figure below shows the expected behavior in the cases of both open and closed TCP ports, and this is what it looks like here. In the console output below is an example of the TCP Maimon scan against a Linux server. As mentioned, because open ports and closed ports are behaving the same way, the Maimon scan could not discover any open ports on the target system. And this is what their results are. So I'm going to copy and paste this over like so. We got the same results. So let's go ahead and continue here. Actually, we did not get the same results. It says if it's really up, it's blocking our ping. So we didn't get anything back, whereas they did. This type of scan is not the first scan one would pick to discover a system. However, it is important to know about it as you don't know when it could come in handy. In the Maimon scan, how many flags are set, and that's going to be 2 because you're talking about you're setting the fin and the ACK. So there you go. And let's continue on to task number 4 here. And it looks like we need to terminate this machine and start up this new one down here. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Scroll past it. There we go. This task will cover how to perform a TCP ACK scan, a TCP window scan, and how to create your own custom flag scan. TCP ACK scan. Let's start with the TCP ACK scan. As the name implies, an ACK scan will send a packet with the flag set. Use the -SA option to choose the scan. As we show in the figure below, the target would respond to the ACK and reset regardless of the state of the port. This behavior happens because a TCP packet with the ACK flag set should be sent only in response to a received TCP packet to acknowledge the receipt of some data. Unlike our case, hence, this scan won't tell us whether the target port is open in a simple setup, and this is what it looks like here. In the following example, we scanned the target VM before installing a firewall on it. As expected, we couldn't learn which ports were open, and that's the results they got. So I'm going to go ahead and run it on my side of things here. Let's continue on here while that's going. This kind of scan would be helpful if there is a firewall in front of the target. Consequently, based on which ACK packets result in responses, you will learn which ports were not blocked by the firewall. In other words, this type of scan is more suitable to discover firewall rule sets and configuration. After setting up the target VM with a firewall, we repeat the ACK scan. This time we receive some interesting results as seen in the console output below. We have 3 ports that aren't being blocked by the firewall. This result indicates that the firewall is blocking all other ports except these ports. And that's what it looks like here. So let's go ahead and continue on. Window scan. Another similar scan is the TCP window scan. The TCP window scan is almost the same as the ACK scan. However, it examines the TCP window field of the reset packets return. On specific systems, this can reveal that the port is open. You can select this type of scan with the -SW. As shown in the figure below, we expected to get a reset packet in reply to our uninvited ACK packets, regardless of whether the port is open or closed, and this is what it looks like here. Similarly, launching a TCP window scan against a Linux system with no firewall will not provide much information, as we can see in the console output below. The results of the window scan against a Linux server with no firewall didn't give any extra information compared to the ACK scan executed earlier. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this over like so. And you can see that in the results here, what they're talking about. However, as you expect, if we repeat our TCP window scan against a server behind a firewall, we expect to get more satisfying results. In the console output below, the TCP window scan pointed that 3 ports are detected as closed. This is in contrast with the ACK scan that labeled the same 3 ports as unfiltered. Although we know that these ports are not closed, we realize they responded differently, indicating that the firewall does not block them. And this is their results here. Custom scan. If you want to experiment with a new TCP flag combination beyond the built-in TCP scan types, you can do so using the following -- scan flags. For instance, if you want to set, send, reset, and fin simultaneously, you can do so using the -- scan flags, then RST, SYN, and then fin. As shown in the figure below, if you develop your custom scan, you need to know how the different ports will behave to interpret the results in different scenarios correctly. And that's what this looks like here, a custom scan. Finally, it is essential to note that the ACK scan and the window scan were very efficient at helping us map out the firewall rules. However, it is vital to remember that just because a firewall is not blocking a specific port, it does not necessarily mean that a service is listening on that port. For example, there is possibility that the firewall rules need to be updated to reflect recent service changes. Hence, ACK and window scans are exposing the firewall rules, not the services. In TCP window scan, how many flags are set? So I believe that's going to be 1. And you decided to experiment with a custom TCP scan that has the reset flag set. What would you add after the scan flags? Well, you're going to add RST for reset. All right, the VM received an update to its firewall rule set. A new port is now allowed by the firewall. After you make sure that you have terminated the VM from task 2, start the VM for this task, launch the attack box. You haven't already done that already. Once both are ready, open the terminal on the attack box and use Nmap to launch an ACK against the target VM. How many ports appeared unfiltered? And you can see that there are 4 ports that appear unfiltered. So that's going to be the answer to that one. And then what is the new port number that appeared? The new port number is going to be 443. And it says that it thinks that it's HTTPS that's running on there. But if you navigate to it via Firefox or a web browser, you can see that there's nothing there, right? So that's going to be a no. And let's continue on to task number 5 here, where we're going to be talking about spoofing and decoys. In some network setups, you will be able to scan a target system using a spoofed IP address and even a spoofed MAC address. Such a scan is only beneficial in a situation where you can guarantee to capture the response. If you try to scan a target from some random network using a spoofed IP address, chances are you won't have any response routed to you, and the scan results could be unreliable. The following figure shows the attacker launching the command nmap-s spoofed IP. Consequently, Nmap will craft all the packets using the provided source IP address, spoofed IP. The target machine will respond to the incoming packet, sending the replies to the destination IP address. For the scan to work and give accurate results, the attacker needs to monitor the network traffic to analyze the replies, and that's what this looks like here. In brief, scanning with a spoofed IP address is 3 steps. 1. Attacker sends a packet with a spoofed source IP address to the target machine. 2. Target machine replies to the spoofed IP address as the destination. 3. Attacker captures the replies to figure out open ports. In general, you expect to specify the network interface using the -E and to explicitly disable ping scan using the -PN. Therefore, instead of nmap-s spoofed IP, you will need to issue the nmap-e network interface-pn-s to tell nmap explicitly which network interface to use and not to expect to receive a ping reply. It is worth repeating that this scan will be useless if the attacker system cannot monitor the network for responses. When you are on the same subnet as the target machine, you should be able to spoof your MAC address as well. You can specify the source MAC address using the dash dash spoof dash MAC and then spoof MAC address. The address spoofing is only possible if the attacker and the target machine are on the same Ethernet 802.3 network or the same Wi-Fi 802.11. Spoofing only works in a minimal number of cases where certain conditions are met. Therefore, the attacker might resort to using decoys to make it more challenging to be pinpointed. The concept is simple. Make the scan appear to be coming from many IP addresses so that the attacker's IP address would be lost among them. As we see in the figure below, the scan of the target machine will appear to be coming from 3 different sources, and consequently, the replies will go to the decoys as well, and that's what this looks like here. Nmap dash capital D, then decoy me, decoy to the machine IP. You can launch a decoy scan by specifying a specific or random IP address after the dash capital D. For example, and that's what it looks like here, we'll make the scan of 10.10.124.64 appear as coming from the IP addresses 10.10.0.1, yada yada yada, and then the LME to indicate that your IP address should appear in the third order. Another example command would be the following here, where the third and fourth source IP addresses are assigned randomly, while the fifth source is going to be the attacker's IP address. In other words, each time you execute the later command, you would expect two new random IP addresses to be the third and fourth decoy sources. What do you need to add to the command sudo nmap 10.10.124.64 to make the scan appear as if it's coming from the source IP 10.10.10.11, and that's going to be remember the dash D option, right? Because you want to set that, wait a second. No, it's going to be the dash capital S, but that's what they said up here, right? Yeah, capital S, 'cause you want to spoof that IP. And then it's going to be the 10.10.10.10.11, like so. What do you need to add to the command to make the scan appears coming from source IP addresses in addition to your address? This is what it looks like here, dash D 10.10.20.21, 10.10.20.28, and then the me at the end. Task number 6, fragmented packets. A firewall is a piece of software or hardware that permits packets to pass through or blocks them. It functions based on firewall rules summarized as blocking all traffic with exceptions or allowing all traffic with exceptions. For instance, you might block all traffic to your server except those coming to your web server. A traditional firewall inspects at least the IP header and the transport layer header. A more sophisticated firewall would also try to examine the data carried by the transport layer. An IDS is intrusion detection system, inspects network packets for select behavioral patterns or specific content signatures. It raises an alert whenever a malicious rule is met. In addition to the IP header and transport layer header, an IDS would inspect the data contents in the transport layer and check if it matches any malicious pattern. How can you make it less likely for a traditional firewall slash IDS to detect your Nmap activity? It is not easy to answer this. However, depending on the type of firewall slash IDS, you might benefit from dividing the packet into smaller packets. Fragmented packets. Nmap provides the option dash little f to fragment packets. Once chosen, the IP data will be divided into 8 bytes or less, adding another dash lowercase f dash. You can do it 2 ways here, as they have specified here. We'll split the data into 16-byte fragments instead of 8. You can change the default value by using the dash dash MTU. However, you should always choose a multiple of 8. To properly understand fragmentation, we need to look at the IP header in the figure below. It might look complicated at first, but we notice that we know most of its field. In particular, notice the source address taking 32 bits, 4 bytes, on the 4th row, while the destination address is taking another 4 bytes on the 5th row. The data that we will fragment across multiple packets is highlighted in red. To aid in reassembly on the recipient side, IP addresses uses the identification ID and fragment offset shown on the second row of the figure below, and that's what that looks like here. Let's compare um, running nmap-ss and this other one here. As you know by now, this will use stealth TCP scan on port 80. However, in the second command, we are requesting nmap's fragments the IP packets. In the first two lines, we can see an ARP query. In response, Nmap issued an ARP query because the target is on the same Ethernet. This second two lines show a TCP send ping and a reply. The fifth line is the beginning of the port scan. Nmap sends a TCP send packet to port 80. In this case, the IP header is 20 bytes and the TCP header is 24 bytes. Note the following, or the minimum size of the TCP header is 20 bytes, and that's what that looks like here. With fragmentation requested via a dash lowercase f, the 24 bytes of the TCP header will be divided into multiples of 8 bytes, with the last fragment containing 8 bytes or less of the TCP header. Since 24 is divisible by 8, we got 3 IP fragments. Each has 20 bytes of IP header and 8 bytes of TCP header. We can see the 3 fragments between the 5th and the 7th lines here. Note that if you added the dash lowercase f, the fragmentation of the data will be multiples of 16. In other words, the 24 bytes of the TCP header in this case would be divided over two IP fragments, the first containing 16 bytes and the second containing 8 bytes of the TCP header. On the other hand, if you prefer to increase the size of your packets to perform or to make them look more innocuous, you can use the following option here, which is dash dash data dash length num, where num specifies the number of bytes you want to append to your packets here. If the TCP segment has a size of 64 and the dash FF option is being used, how many IP fragments will you get? Now, this is going to be 4 because remember it's in multiples of 16. So 64 divided by 16 is going to be 4. Now let's continue on to task number 7, where we're going to talk about idle zombie scans. Spoofing the source IP address can be a great approach to scanning stealthily. However, spoofing will only work in specific network setups. It requires you to be in a position where you can monitor the traffic. Considering these limitations, spoofing your IP address can have little use. However, we can give it an upgrade with the idle scan. The idle scan or zombie scan requires an idle system connected to the network that you can communicate with. Practically, Nmap will make each probe appear as if it's coming from the idle zombie host. Then it will check for indicators whether the idle zombie host received any response to the spoofed probe. This is accomplished by checking the IP identification, IP ID value in the IP header. You can run an idle scan using the following here, where zombie IP is the IP address of the idle host, the zombie. The idle zombie scan requires the following 3 steps to discover whether a port is open. Number 1, trigger the idle host to respond so that you can record the current IP ID on the idle host. 2, send a send packet to a TCP port on the target. The packet should be spoofed to appear as if it is coming from the idle host zombie IP address. Number 3, trigger the idle machine again to respond so that you can compare the new IP ID with the one received earlier. Let's explain with figures. In figure below, we have the attacker system probing an idle machine, a multi-function printer. By sending a SYNAC, it responds with a reset packet containing its newly incremented IP ID, and that's what it looks like here. So the attacker system communicates with an idle system to find its current IP ID. The attacker will send a send packet to the TCP port they want to check on the target machine in the next step. However, the packet will use the idle host IP address at the source. 3 scenarios would arise. The first scenario shown in the figure below, the TCP port is closed, therefore the target machine responds to the idle host with a reset packet. The idle host does not respond, hence its IP ID is not incremented, and that's what it looks like here. And the second scenario, as shown below, the TCP port is open, so the machine responds with a SYNAC to the idle host. the idle host responds to the unexpected packet with a reset packet, thus incrementing its IP ID. That's what it looks like here. In the third scenario, the target machine does not respond at all due to firewall rules. This lack of response will lead to the same result as the close port. The idle host won't increase the IP ID. For the final step, the attacker sends another SYN-ACK to the idle host. The idle host responds with a reset packet, incrementing the IP ID once again, or by one again. The attacker needs to compare the IP ID of the reset packet received in the first step with the IP ID of the reset packet received in the third step. If the difference is 1, it means the port on the target machine was closed or filtered. However, if the difference is 2, it means that the port on the target was open. It is worth repeating that this scan is called an idle scan because choosing an idle host is indispensable for the accuracy of the scan. If the idle host is busy, all the return IP IDs would be useless. Okay, question time. If it says you discovered a rarely used network printer with the IP address of 10.10.5.5 and you decide to use it as a zombie in your idle scan, what argument would you add to your Nmap scan? And to do that, I'm just going to copy this real quick. Now to do that, if we scroll back up here, we can see that the argument we need is going to be this SI. So it should be looking like this here. SI. And there you go. Task number 8 here, getting more details. And let's see what they got for us. I'm going to terminate this machine here because it looks like we're going to have to start up another machine. So I'm going to start this one up. Getting more details. You might consider adding the dash dash reason if you want Nmap to provide more details regarding its reasoning and conclusions. Consider the 2 scans below to the system, however, the later adds dash dash reason, and that's what it looks like here for the initial scan. And then they add reason to it down here. Providing the dash dash reason flag gives us the explicit reason why Nmap concluded that the system is up or a particular port is open. In this console output above, we can see that this scan or the system is considered online because Nmap received an ARP response. On the other hand, we know that the SSH port is deemed to be open because Nmap sent a SYN-ACK packet back. You can see that here. For more detailed output, you can consider using the dash V for verbose output or dash VV for even more verbosity. And that's what it looks like here. Let's see here. The if dash VV does not satisfy your curiosity, you can use the dash D for debugging details or dash double D for even more details. You can guarantee that the dash D will create an output that extends beyond a single screen. Let's see, launch attack box, already done that. And wait for it to load completely. So we're going to launch this scan against it. Let me go ahead and clear all this stuff out of here. And here we go. It says, what is the reason provided for the stated ports being open? And the reason is going to be the SYN-ACK. So if you copy this out of here and paste it over. And let's go ahead and wrap up this video with task number 9, summary. This room covered the following scan types, and that's what they look like here. We went over all of these in the room. So be sure to play around with these, memorize them, jot them down in your notes. You can use them for later if you need to. These scan types rely on setting TCP flags in unexpected ways to prompt ports for reply. Null, fin, and Xmas scan provoke a response from closed ports, while Maimon, ACK, and Window scan provoke a response from open and closed ports. And here are the other options here. You got reason, dash V, dash VV, etc., etc. Ensure that you've taken note of the options explained in this room. And then the next one we're going to take a look at is going to be this Nmap post port scans room, and that wraps up this video. If you are new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button with the notification bell. Hit that like button if you're enjoying the content. Comment below your thoughts and opinions discussed in the video. As always, thank you all for watching. Have a nice day, and I will see you later.